Yeah, um, I guess my view of Revelation is a from a partial preterist view that most of it is already past,
Right.
and therefore, yeah, Satan has been cast out, but it depends really on what you refer to as what is heaven,
Mm.
and there are, a number of different realms in heaven, and certainly he has no access to the realm of heaven where there is God's presence, in terms of the temple and those things. But if it, one of the questions would be, well, when was he cast down? And if he was cast out of heaven after the war in heaven between the third of the angels that he essentially traded with and seduced, then that happened before the foundation of this world, if you like. Um, but then you read in Zechariah 3 and in Job and in other places that he came into the presence of God. So there is obviously a realm where he was able to come into the presence of God, and come into that accusory court, which is in the realm of the kingdom of God, rather than come into heaven, which he's blocked from. Um, so my view would be, the scriptures that talk about him engaging in the different courts, or within the Old Testament, are still after he was cast out of heaven.
Mm.
Um, Now, some people would say that when Jesus dealt with his accusations in the wilderness, then he had Jesus took authority over him, took back what Adam took by essentially facing the same um, temptations that Eve and Adam faced, and then overcame them, and therefore that was what enabled him to administer the kingdom. And he said, he saw Satan like lightning fall, um, you know, which I think has merit in the fact I think Jesus did take authority back and was able to administer healing and the kingdom in this physical realm. But my view personally is that he still has access into the realm where the court of accusation is. Um, and therefore we have to deal with him there. That's the and that realm is a realm which is in darkness and light, and it's our responsibility to ensure that the darkness is removed, which we get to do by dealing with the mountains and the authority to deal with what has been there as a result of our lack of occupation of realms of authority. Ultimately, Jesus has all authority in heaven and on earth, and it's only the authority that we give him that gives him any access at all, really, or generationally, people have given him in our generations that give him access into our lives in any way. So there's a lot of it's a big issue. I understand, and I think a lot of teaching that would say that, well, everything was done on the cross, therefore Satan has no access to our lives at all. Sounds very nice, but then when you get someone manifesting and crawling around like a snake in front of you, you have to ask, well, what is that? So some of the theoretical approach to these things, when you actually come and face people and see the manifestation of what the enemy's doing, you have to face the fact that he certainly has influence over people's lives, which you have to deal with. So yeah, my personal experience in having faced him and faced other familiar spirits and other things they were real encounters. So if he's not got access, then I don't know what I was encountering. Um, you know, yeah, so
Right,
you know, um,
right.
you know,
I know some of the things that I've been enjoying. Well, maybe not at first, but like haven't this week, but in times past, engaging with just with the fire of God, uh, where I'm constantly going into this place where it's just this fire. It seems to consume like any dark things in my soul. It just takes a consuming fire to a whole different level. And at first, it was very, very challenging for me. But now I find myself wanting to go back there again and again because
yeah,
uh, each time I feel freer, just different things happening and so what was kind of an unpleasant moment is now like no, I like going there, and I'm just curious. Uh, have you spoken to other people that kind of been again engaged? I know there's different ways of engaging with that, but kind of like just that whole fire around where it just seems to burn everything out of you, and
yeah, yeah. I mean, my first engagement there was um, after I encountered the Father, and I had encountered when I initially engaged in heavenly realms, um, as a series of encounters over a few weeks while I was on a fast. Uh, the first, I guess, 10 days, I'd experienced encounters with the Holy Spirit and the Holy Spirit taking me to places and certain angels and different things, and with Jesus a lot. But I really didn't encounter the Father, but I knew I should have done. But I knew there was something hindering me in doing that. And eventually, Jesus came up to me and said, "Look, you have a father wound." And so I initially started to protest that I dealt with everything towards my father in terms of forgiveness, and I had done, and a lot of ministry around that, and held nothing against my father, even though we didn't have a good relationship when I was young. But he said you're still wounded, and that's what's stopping you really coming into a deeper experience of the Father, and therefore enabled to go deeper into other things. And so he said, do you want to be healed? So I said, yep, okay, I'll receive that. And I immediately saw a scar over my heart, about 14 inches or more long. Um, it wasn't an open wound; it was a scar. But then the Father just walked up to me and just began to just tell me he loved me. And each time he said, "I love you," that I could feel the wound, the scar tissue, just begin to disappear.
mm,
And so once I'd gone through that, and it lasted about 45 minutes until there was no scar left, and I felt totally accepted by the Father, and then sort of really began to hang out with him and to go deeper. Then he took me to that fiery place, and he described it to me as the judgment seat.
mm,
And so I initially um, was really shaking. I mean, I was I it wasn't that I was fearful in one sense, but it's almost like I wondered whether if I went there I'd come back out. That I just felt my soul was sort of somewhat reticent in going in. to the place, and I saw it as almost like going into this dark tunnel, and I was given my scroll of my life to go in there with me by the Spirit of the fear of the Lord, and I walked in there and just came before this pillar of fire, and the eyes of that fire just came out and started to just open everything up.
Yeah.
And then, it's as like I was before the eyes of God and the consuming fire of God, and I had to give him permission to open the scroll, and as I did that, it was like, well, how do I open the scroll? And the scripture, the Lion of the tribe of Judah is worthy to open the scroll. And so I was sort of standing before the fire, but it was like God's presence as king, and the scroll got opened, and that was my first encounter with that fiery presence. And all the wood, hay, and stubble that were on my scroll, which was all to do with, everything I'd done in my own strength, or I'd done with the desires to validate myself, or done with the desire to impress people. So I'd done things that were God's will for me, but I hadn't done them with a desire necessarily which was totally pure. All that wood, hay, and stubble got unveiled, and also the gold, silver, and precious stones, and it was like all the memories just came right before me. The memories of those things just came right before, and I remembered them all, in an instant. And so that was my first encounter with it, and then I went out of that place really relieved that I sort of managed to get out of it in one piece, but felt, as you say, very much freer, and any sort of lingering condemnation or guilt that the enemy used to accuse was gone. And I stood outside, and there was an angel there saying, "Okay, where do you want to go now?" And I actually felt I need to go back in there. so I walked back in there and turned the scroll over, and on the reverse side of the scroll, which then opened, it was like all the regrets of my life were there, and initially it was every opportunity that I'd missed in serving God, that he'd given me opportunities that I either didn't see, I didn't hear, I didn't experience, and when I sort of realized, it was just like, oh, I just felt so sad. My heart was just full of regret of all the opportunities I could have had in serving God and the kingdom, and I just missed them through being distracted, not listening, so it was pretty intense. But then there were occasions where there was some gold, silver, and precious stones where, I'd stepped out in faith, and I'd sort of taken risks to be obedient with God, and I felt the pleasure of his heart. Even in the midst of fire, I felt the pleasure of his heart. So, that was a pretty intense thing, and there were a few things that got dealt with there that really, really freed me up. So I had that experience, and for quite a long time I didn't feel comfortable really talking about it or taking anybody else there, or because I just felt, when I first went, I really felt the sort of whole fear and trembling thing, because I guess my soul was just didn't want to face the fire of God, but my spirit really wanted to. But I have gone back there quite a number of times, and I have taken other people there now, and encouraged them to just open up their hearts to allow the fire of God to touch them, without the sense of fear or guilt or condemnation side of it, because it's not dealing with sin as such.
Right.
For me, it didn't deal with sin, because sin's already been dealt with and forgiven. It was more to do with that judgment seat of Christ, and where it says, some people will be saved just by fire because they really haven't done an awful lot in serving God's purpose. But actually, it was like, well, why wait to come before the judgment seat when we can go there now and get our scroll, sorted, so that we can have a greater capacity, and our hearts have a greater capacity to engage God and to engage without fear or without condemnation, so that we can embrace our destiny as sons and begin to administer the kingdom from a different dimension. So over the past month or so, I've probably taken 3 or 4 or 5 groups of people there, and some of them have some pretty intense encounters, and I didn't quite feel guilty, but I sort of felt, hey, you need to be aware, if you come into the fire of God and the fire of His eyes starts to penetrate your life, and you're hiding things, it's not going to be such a pleasant experience as if you come as a living sacrifice and really open up your heart before God and just want Him to see everything and to cleanse everything and purify our hearts at a greater dimension. Then you come in with that expectation. So I know a few people were pretty wrecked for a few days after they'd been there, because I think they faced some of the motives of their own heart that they probably hadn't faced before by being there. But having sort of gone through looking at the motives of my heart in the trading and all that sort of stuff, it hadn't been an issue, but I can imagine it'd be difficult for some people. But it's one of those things. The more times you go back, I've been back taking other people, and I've just stood in the fire of God's presence and just opened my heart afresh and just felt, hey, God, just do whatever you need to do. But it is an intense experience, definitely. So yeah,
it definitely takes cleansing to a whole new level.
Definitely.
I obviously must have a fair amount of issues, because I feel compelled to go back more often than not. So
yeah.
It looks like Rick, you made it.
Yeah. I had to just join in. I never got the phone call, so, or at least I didn't. I don't know.
Probably didn't see it. Sometimes it just kind of says, puts up a little thing about an invitation, and you click on it. But good, you found it.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing anyone's picture on my screen other than down in the little squares on the bottom. I have a message here. There was an error loading your app. This app did not load because there appears to be something wrong with it. And there's a cancel click there. I just don't want to click cancel and lose you guys.
Yeah, that's all right. You can deal with that later. But
okay.
We see you, and you see us, at least in picture form, so that's good. Hey, Lou, do you have anything that you want to ask or add?
Well, yes. Well, first of all, this is amazing. You guys are totally tickling that part of me that is, I know this about me, to have the vision to see these things, and but it hasn't manifested until I've been under Mike's tutelage and learning about these aspects. So what I just see myself is like I have all the puzzle pieces, and I'm slowly clicking them together, and so I'm very excited. I feel this is right up my alley, where I feel most at home. Actually, I feel more at home in this venue than anything else. And right before before the call happened, I had a vision that I see myself kind of, when the tide goes out and it exposes a little bit of land, and I feel like I'm on that little bit of land, and then the tide comes in and goes out, and I'm like, I don't like being here, because the tide comes in and overwhelms me, and then it goes back out, and God's like, okay, and then all of a sudden the plate tectonics went root, and it's like shoved me way up high, like the Himalayas, and with no effort from myself. But all of a sudden, it was this huge mountain where just moments before I was just being overcome by the tides, and I'm like, oh, now this is much better, you know. So that's kind of what happened right before the phone call occurred, and I feel, you know, then the next thing that happened with that was not only could I stand on that little piece of ground on my behalf, but to partner with people that come in my life and help them get to their mountain. And I don't even fully understand all of that, but that's kind of where I'm at this morning, and I'm very excited to meet all you guys, and thank you, Michael, for thinking of me and inviting me.
Okay. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, part of what God's doing is, I think God is like issuing this sound, this vibration or frequency that's coming out of heaven, and it's drawing people who are going to be mentors. So they're forerunners, if you like, of a generation that will engage and then mentor others. And I think that's why, you know, you see that sort of sense, you know this is not just for you, you know this is to help other people. And I think that's really, for me, why I want to connect up with people who are hearing that sound, and our spirit is drawing them into engaging in the heavens, because, you know, and a lot of them, most of them, to be honest, are not young people. They're people who I think, let's say, are more mature, and people whose desires are to mentor and disciple. And, you know, I think it's raising up this Joshua generation. You know, Joshua and Caleb were just 2, but they had to take a whole nother generational in to possess their inheritance. And so God is raising up this Joshua generation, and they're forerunners, because Joshua and Caleb had already been in before, and they'd seen the good land, and they brought a good report back to say, hey, we can go in and take this land, but a generation didn't want it. And I think right now there's a call going out, and there's a generation, and some of them who've had miracles and experiences and encounters, and yet they're not necessarily prepared to go and take the next step into the next level, which for me is about taking personal responsibility for who we are and our calling, and to administer the kingdom proactively, not just reactively or involuntarily. I think a lot of ministries seem to say, okay, it's great if God takes you into these things, and that's awesome, but when it comes to, well, we can step in there and choose to engage, there seems to be an issue around that and some controversy around it, and particularly in engaging the eyes of our heart or engaging deliberately to step into those realms. That seems to be where there's some conflict. And so I feel that God's wanting to draw those people who are willing to be those forerunners, to go and engage, and then just mentor a whole generation to take their inheritance, which is, you know, part of why I want to find people who are hearing that sound and just drawing together, which is, you know, it's exciting to find people like that, you know. And so my first encounters were pretty much, I positioned myself to respond to God's invitation, because I received a prophetic word to say, look, come up here. And I was just like, well, great, yeah, and how do I get up there? You know, I'd been there once, you know, which was just, you know, at my desk, completely went into a trance, lost time, focus, everything, and went into heaven, and God showed me certain things, took me to certain places, and it was just like, wow, and then came out of it and couldn't go back. I didn't know how to go back in, but pursued my desire, my heart kept wanting to engage, and then received this prophetic word saying, you know, God has seen your heart, and he's giving you this invitation to come up here. And I was like, yeah, how? How? How do I do it? Because I tried. Um, so, then I decided, if I felt God called me to go on a fast, and on that fast, that then opened up that realm again. But ever since, it's been, no, I can step into that realm rather than I'm waiting for God to take me into the realm. Because I think there's in Revelation 4, in verse 1, it's like, okay, there's a door standing open in heaven, come up here. And that's the invitation we all get. If we want to come up here, we just need to walk through that door and step through the door, which now I can do whenever I want to, and whereas before I was waiting. But I had a forerunner experience that didn't put me off. It helped me to pursue and want it more and more, and the desires of my heart drew me towards it. And then once the invitation was, I was willing to do anything. So, I went on a 40-day fast, and, the first 3 weeks were, talk about fire. My whole body was burning, and I felt my bones were on fire. And yet all I could do was just repent, and I didn't even know what was left of to repent of. I was just desperate. I repented of everything I possibly thought about, and until, I just, again, I went into a trance-like state to start with and was taken into the realm of heaven. But then over the next 3 weeks, I just learned that I could step into it. And that's what I've sort of been teaching people ever since, over the last 3 or 4 years, to, yes, we can step in. Sometimes it takes practice to train our senses to engage where we've not used to being engaging. But that's sort of part of the process. So it's great to find people who are hungry and desiring, and hopefully, willing to be raised up as this generation, like Joshua, and disciple a whole harvest. I think, prophetically, I think, many people have talked about a billion-fold harvest. I know Bob Jones did, and I know various others did. But I've seen that in the realm of the spirit, and those are just the harvesters. They are just the generation that God is going to use as the harvesters, but they need equipping in the supernatural dimensions of the kingdom. And God is looking for volunteers, really, who are willing to say yes. And I think those who are willing to say yes and willing to give it away, He is going to release and give opportunities. And I think, I believe that God wants me to be part of raising up that Joshua generation, and to find others who are willing to take responsibility of kingdom authority, and to raise up more and more people. So we're ready, But,
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what I discovered is if I'm around different men and women who have been in ministry, say for a considerable length of time, it seems to be more challenging for them to engage with heaven at will, because they, for so long they're primarily governed by what they believe is the sovereignty, like the Paul experience, that all of a sudden he's just caught up. And so they lean more toward that and feel like that, it's too much of the imagination and all these other things. And I don't know, there's just something that doesn't connect in their spirit concerning faith and acting in faith and initiating something by faith and letting it lead to one thing or the next. So that's kind of interesting. I think part of it is a fear, which is also puzzling, because in other areas they move very strongly, in different giftings and things like that, but it's just like this line that seems to be drawn in the sand. Recently, Lori and I, we were in Seattle, and we had gone and seen that movie Heaven is for Real. And I've told her prior, I said, I feel like this is a prophetic indication for the hour that we're in, not realizing that when we went to that movie, the whole center focus of that movie wasn't about a child dying and going to heaven. It was about a child not dying and going to heaven.
Mm.
And so what bothered the people, how they set that movie up, is the people in the church were distraught over the fact that the father was, encouraging the son in the sense of his experience of encountering heaven without dying. And so I'm sitting there going, oh my goodness, this is such a reality of where we're at, that people, they break that, they still got that covenant with death, and they just think that's really the only primary way that they can enter into, the kingdom of God or the realm of heaven. So I just thought, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's definitely a line drawn in the sand, and I think there are a whole load of ministries that are going to end up like Moses and not going into the promised land and receiving their full inheritance because they want to carry on doing it the way they've always done it. And they may well be moving in miracles, signs and wonders, amazing things, but the next level of responsibility is to administer the kingdom from heaven, to manifest it on earth at a whole different dimension. And there is this fear of letting go of the old and embracing that. And particularly over the issue of imagination, I think imagination is a battle line that's drawn.
Right.
And some ministries are warning people not to use their imagination because they're at risk of being deceived and all this sort of stuff. And it's fear-based. And I think Jesus made it really clear what his view of the imagination was. If you can commit adultery by using your imagination in your heart and it be just as real to him as if you've actually done it, then that's the power the imagination has. It is just as real as the real world, because the spiritual realm is the real world. It's the real realm. And so engaging the eyes of our heart, or seeing with the eyes of our heart, using our imagination to activate that realm, it's, where I think it's in Corinthians, I think it talks about, we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but what is unseen. Well, that's not our natural eyes, is it, that we're fixing on the unseen? It's actually the eyes of our heart, or the eyes of our spirit, that we're fixing on the unseen. So we just have to learn to see that actually God is the one who gave us an imagination to be able to see the unseen, which some people are really struggling with. And there seems to be a greater faith that the enemy can deceive than God can give good things. And I think, again, Jesus used that same thing where he said, if you, sort of being fathers, would give good gifts to your children, why would you expect God to give you something bad if you're asking for something good? If you ask for an egg, he's not going to give you a scorpion. So there's that sense where we need to trust that God, when we're pursuing him and seeking him, is going to give us an experience and an encounter of him, not worry about whether we will be deceived because our imagination is leading us astray. And I think there's a lot of fear around that, which we need to make sure that people are free from, and that doesn't stop people engaging, because I think the line is drawn, and I think there are certain ministries which are beginning to start to come out in opposition to some of the things. Even though they've already experienced heaven themselves, they seem to disapprove of people engaging in heaven voluntarily when they choose to step in, and there seems to be this issue with it. And the enemy's going to use it to try and stop people. So we have to make sure that, I think, we have good, solid precedents for it. in a sense, in terms of scriptural precedents and also our personal testimonies of it, so that we can actually stop people being dissuaded because of fear because we have to train our senses to be able to discern, and our imagination is one of our senses. And none of these people would have a problem with God giving us visions or dreams, because it's, oh well, God does it. As soon as we want to engage in a vision or a dream, then it becomes a problem. But I think we're going to see that battle intensify over the next period of time, and I think we have to be ready for it, to be able to encourage people that it's okay.
Yeah. We had a speaker not too long ago, and I had to be careful because it was a bit hostile when trying to share some things or whatever, and I could just see this thing rise up, and I was like, oh my goodness, and I kept, as I was experiencing this and then hearing the comments, I was like, wow, I've always known this. I think we all have to some degree, but the sadness of our greatest conflict, not necessarily coming from the world, but coming from the inside out.
Yeah.
And I was just seeing it more apparent because, and I think too that sometimes we think in ministry-wise or certain things that are going on that we have a corner on the market, and so that can be very challenging when you're dealing with that mentality, because again, it's a different mindset of leadership, that they feel like they're leading the way. There's certain things that they're preparing the people for, and that type of mindset concerning heaven, accessing it, and all the above, totally takes it off of the previous grid, and it just makes it like an open field, and just becomes a very challenging thing. I thought it would be awesome maybe this morning, I don't know what you're thinking, Mike, but to do an exercise that just maybe we can do some engagement just wherever you feel in your spirit to go.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't know how much time we have left, but I just thought it would be good to.
Yeah. I mean, some of it would be, where you guys are comfortable. I mean, for me, I find there's two pathways that you can engage in. One is the pathway of relationship, in where you engage with God within. And so within, when we open a first love door and we invite God to come into our spirit, and then we can engage with him there, and that gives us access back into the Garden of Eden, so we can go to the tree of life and the throne of grace, and you can go to the waterfalls and the river of life there, which is one pathway, which is about identity and intimacy and knowing God. And then the other pathway is the pathway of responsibility, where you're really looking at mandates, engaging the will of God, looking for judicial authority from mountains and courts and different things. So, I'm really easy in terms of, it's just where you would prefer to engage, then that's fine.
I'll leave it up to Lou and Rick which journey you want to take. This reminds me too, another gal that's going to be with us next time around. Her name's Mary, and we were doing some engagements at our meeting and stuff, encountering heaven. And she came up to me later and she says, "Oh my goodness," she goes, "I entered into this realm and I wanted to go to the tree of life, and all of a sudden a friend of mine showed up that had gone to heaven." And she was like, "Oh, I can take you there. I know where it's at." And so she takes her to the tree of life, and Mary says, "Well, oh, I felt like I wanted to like take a leaf off of the tree. At first, it was just this glowing water." She goes, "But I wanted to like eat one or something." So she she takes a leaf off and eats of the tree, right? And her friend, she says, she laughs and she goes, "Oh no, that's not how you do it." And she rakes like a handful and just like sticks them in her mouth, you know. And she starts laughing and she says, "That's how you do it." Anyhow, it was pretty funny, and you could tell it was extremely real because there was a lot of awesome things that came out of it. So, what do you guys think? You want do the court thing, the mandate, the love gate? What's
They all sound really exciting to me. The courts and the mountains and those things, I'm not real knowledgeable of those in terms of, it's like a whole new vocabulary to me and a whole new place for my imagination to even get a hold of. Experiencing the Lord in my heart, I think I'm more familiar with right now. So, but I don't have a preference. I just want it all.
awesome? Well, Mike, let's go through the love gate and
Okay, yeah. I mean, we can take that pathway because, to be honest, that's the pathway that we all need to come out of intimacy and relationship.
right.
Because the kingdom is about righteousness and justice, but you can't really administer justice without coming out of the heart of God and that intimacy and flowing from relationship. Because we need to be a priest before we are a king. And that priestly engaging with the intimate things of God is where the source of our life comes from. And ultimately, that's what flows out of us to create the atmosphere around us and engage in the spiritual realm around us, because we have the unseen realm around us all the time. We can step into the realm of heaven, into the heavenly realms, and engage there. But actually, we still need to be a gateway of heaven on earth, so we still have to see a manifestation of the river of life flowing through us and our spirit engaging the realm of the spirit around us. So I always encourage people to start with that first pathway, because it creates a flow and it creates an intimacy, so it'd be a good place to start. So, yeah. Okay. Well, let's. I'd encourage you just to close your eyes. And just begin to picture within your own spirit that first love gate, that place where the kingdom is within you. And Jesus is just knocking on that door. And you just reach out and you open that door. And you just sense his presence. Just come and fill your spirit. The river of life just begins to flow. Just sense his presence come around you. Just sense his love, his peace, his joy. Just feel his affirmation. As he just longs for you to be near him. Now just allow Jesus to take you by the hand and to take you back through that doorway, through that gateway of first love, into the realm of the kingdom which was within you and which connects you with the realm of heaven. And just let him take you through the dimension, and just take you into Eden, the Garden of God, where you can engage in the river of life. And as you stand by the river that's flowing, just breathe in the atmosphere of heaven. Just sense the freedom, the life, the energy as you breathe in the atmosphere of the realm of heaven. And as you look at the river of life, you can get in, feel it flowing through you, no resistance. You can look into the river. Sometimes there's things on the river bottom that are there for you to find. You can go under and breathe under the water. This is living water, contains the breath of life, the source of life. On this journey, you may feel you want to stay in one place. You may feel you want to follow the river and the pathways. Just feel free to allow your spirit to help you engage. As you look to the right, in the distance, there's waterfalls. As you fix your eyes on the waterfalls, you think about the waterfall. Just move towards it. Let your spirit move towards that waterfall that's cascading down. And you can stand under the waterfall of His presence. This deep calls out to deep, and the deep things of God just call out to the deep things of your spirit, your destiny. Just allow that waterfall to cascade down on you. Sense its energy, its life, the revelation flows into you. Now just begin to allow your spirit to flow up. There's no resistance in the realm of heaven. Just allow your spirit to flow up that waterfall. As you just float to the top, on the side of the river there's a pathway. As you step onto the pathway, everything is living, has feelings, emotions, colors, fragrances, sounds. It's all alive. Just sense the life around you. As you begin to just follow that pathway, Up ahead, there's a bridge crossing over the river, and standing on the bridge is Jesus. Can walk towards him, sense his pleasure to welcome you to the garden of his Father. He looks into your eyes longingly. To enter into the garden's presence of rest, you just need to offload all the burdens, anything that you've been concerned about, any responsibilities that you've been carrying, just cast them all onto him. It's like you carry a backpack sometimes of weights. Just hand it over to him. Feel the lightness as that weights have just gone. And he welcomes you to walk across the bridge into the garden of the Father. It's a place of absolute rest and peace. You can just walk into the garden, just sense being still and knowing him. Just engage with the Father. Just be. This is the place of absolute peace and rest where he is, where you can be, where you can connect up to the universe, where every atom of your being is connected. Just sense that you are part of eternity, the vastness of it, and yet you're part of it, the sound, the harmony that you're part of, the symphony that you are part of. Just feel. As you turn over, in the corner of the garden there's a waterfall that's cascading down, and at the bottom of the waterfall there's a pool of deep blue. That you can walk over to, and you can dive into that pool. It's a pool that contains the vast sum of the thoughts that he has about you, that he's always had about you. And as you swim down to the depths of that pool, there's a chest, and in that chest there are gold coins that you can take and place within you. Eat them, place them within your innermost being. Each coin represents one of the thoughts that God has about you, the thoughts of who you are, your identity. Just let the revelation of the thoughts of God just touch the depths of you. Let those thoughts be foundational truth in who you are. Just let the revelation of your eternal destiny just begin to go deep within your spirit. Let it be encoded within you. A fresh foundation of truth imparted out of the vast sum of the thoughts he has concerning you. Now you can just rise up to the surface. Again, just float up that waterfall. Presence of God drawing you deeper and deeper into him. And ahead of you on the river is the tree of life. And as you walk towards the tree of life, you're drawn to the leaves that are like scrolls. Some of them are on the water. If you're drawn to them, take them, eat them. They reveal some of the destiny and the ministry you have as healing to the nations and people. But on the tree are fruits. Just let your spirit draw you towards the fruit. Take it and begin to eat it. And just let the life, the energy, and the meaning of that fruit for you just fill you. Just taste it, feel it, sense it. Let it fill you with a revelation of the life, its true meaning as the source of your life. Just feel the abundance and the overflow that you have to give away. Freely you receive from the source of life. Freely, as you take it within you, becomes a source to release to others. Now you can follow the river and walk right through, and on the other side ahead of you is the throne of grace. Just come boldly to the throne of grace. Just allow the Father to pick you up, place you on his lap, your head on his chest, feeling the rhythm of his heart, sensing his pleasure and his joy. That you would come boldly to him. Let him know the deepest needs of your heart right now, the deepest desires and needs of your heart, so that he can release to you grace and mercy, where you can find all the resource, insight, revelation that you need. Sense his pleasure as he imparts to you, as you open up your heart to him. The source of your strength. Now, as you just come and stand before him, he reveals himself in his kingship as the lion. You stand before the lion, look into his eyes and see the freedom that you have. Feel free. Feel your spirit, the lightness, the realms of the colors and the fragrances and the sounds of heaven swirl around you as you feel part and have freedom. Now just allow him, as the lion, to be your safe place. And just lie on him in rest and peace. The king being your provision and protection. As a child, a little child, your heart just absolute rest. Total peace. You're at home, intimate, whole. Just let your spirit just receive the revelation of each encounter, each place. Just let it go deep within you. That becomes the doorway to re-enter, to re-experience the testimony that you can use as an access to step in to each place, to explore, as he will take you on the journeys that you need to go on. Now we can just step back through the veils, back into this realm, taking with you those memories that you can store, meditate over, and engage with. Okay. Okay. Well,
that was awesome. I have to say that.
Yeah, you get on with any of those, but my encouragement would be just, you know, once a doorway's open, then you can just step back in and re-engage it.
So, Mike, what you don't know about me is I work for the county. I'm a building inspector and I'm a plan reviewer.
Okay.
And so when you were talking about the doors and the gates and opening and going through, I had my little hammer and I took the hinge pins out. I was like, this door is never going to close. And we went to the gate and I was like, this gate's never going to close. I disassembled that door because I don't ever want it to close again, and it was pretty neat. So, you know, if I pass through there, I want to never have that door close on me. So I saw myself taking the pins out of the doors and laid them aside.
That's good. Yeah.
For me, it was it seemed like as you spoke and I would enter into a place with my imagination, it was a struggle to stay there. I would catch glimpses of things.
Yeah.
I had good experiences, and I feel like I've taken back out from where we were internally, and it's a part of me now, and it's like more to discover.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of what's in there.
Yeah.
But you know, I had a hard time sometimes to stay in focus.
Yeah.
Is there some advice or encouragement or whatever on how to stay focused as I do this?
Well, the key is not to strive to try and see. We often struggle because we try and see, and if we see something, it appears more real. What we need to do is engage our senses. So sometimes it's like, it's just our spirit is knowing what we're receiving, where we are, and the engagement, and it's allowing our emotions and our feelings and our impressions. It's like senses that will receive impressions about it, which will go deep. And then as you meditate on it afterwards, then you find there's a flow that comes out that you won't take it all in. I mean, these little exercises, they're just really doorway openers, really, so that you can go back, spend the time yourself in one place. You know, spend a whole session just engaging in the river of life. You know, what does it feel like? And you may not necessarily have a great visual encounter, but your spirit can still engage, you know, and it's developing how we tend to engage ourselves. You know, some people are more visual, some people are more perceptive. You know, when my spirit engages, I receive a flow of revelatory information, of knowing, which doesn't necessarily equate to vision, but I can describe it. I can describe it because I can describe where I am in the waterfalls and the different places, but it's not always a vision I'm describing. I'm just describing my spirit knowing where it is, and that's how it communicates. That's how my spirit communicates with my mind, as a flow of almost description. You know, but it's just finding what works individually and connecting with that, and then looking to practice training your senses to engage, and go back and spend time with God and just ask Him, okay, you know, what were the thoughts? You know, how do those thoughts change me? What would you want me to be different when I know how you think about me? And just talk and dialogue with God around some of the things you've encountered, even if there were glimpses, take that glimpse and then use that glimpse as the access the next time, so that that glimpse would become something which is more than a glimpse, and you would begin to experience it. Don't be too concerned about having a full-blown Technicolor version of it all to start with, because often it doesn't happen that way. And I engage by faith, and God always responds by faith, whether I see anything or not, because my spirit knows that I can step into those places and engage, and so I can, So don't be too concerned about it.
Yeah. What you're describing seems to be the nature of my relationship in receiving from the Father, for the past few years. So I had a vision type experience once that went on for quite a while, and went to different places, and kind of like when you said the first time something happened, and you've been trying to get back in ever since then, and kind of describe part of my walk here.
Yeah, but for me, I didn't know at that point. I didn't know how to activate my imagination to go back into an encounter. I didn't know. No one ever taught me about imagination or anything. I understand a vision was a vision. I saw something, but I didn't know how to go back through and use it as a doorway to re-encounter it. Yeah, but that's what we can do. That's what meditation does. You picture the previous thing you had, and then you use that to go back into the encounter until you've so trained your senses that it's easy to step in at any time. Now for me, I can step into any of those places I've been to easily, but I couldn't to start with. I needed to engage a doorway to access it, and I used meditation to do it, of thinking about it, of picturing what I saw before, and then it drew me back into it, and I then began to find it. I could experience it easier as I engaged. So,
Well, I'm very excited about this.
Yeah, it's awesome. Well, I've got to check out, guys. Mike, thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to future engagements. So, is this like every other